Story Driven. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Zach.
And we're doing something that Zach thought of. We each got a book.
Smart guy.
And on these books are badass people. Continue, babe. Because I don't know how to explain it as bad as you do. Good.
So anyway, we got some really, really badass people. Two awesome warriors in the past who happen to be female, and we're in World War II. That was our subject and baseline. That was the challenge. Find somebody in World War II, have to be female, and try to pick the baddest person you could find. So we did that. The challenge was set. The rules were laid out. The points count for nothing, much like whose line is it anyway. And we're going to get down.
You can decide.
You can decide.
Who do you think
is
better?
Is the baddest person. I happen to think hers will be. Just based on the... we'll
Just
see.
because he's jealous of my awesome notes.
We will see. Yes. Yeah, mine is our book. Okay? Thinking here, all right? All right, so who did you pick?
I chose Virginia Hall. This book.
What's the name of the book?
The name of the book is A Woman of No Importance, an untold story of an American spy who helped win World War II.
You should have done your vocal warm-ups.
I know. me.
The arsonist had oddly shaped feet.
You're a dirty pirate hooker.
Who's that by? Sorry.
So, guys, we're really horrible at this, but I hope you enjoy. Sonia, for now. And who'd you choose?
We're a little more relaxed. You see, I got beer, she's got wine. We're getting into it. All right, I chose the book called Code Name Lise. It is a badass story about a person who became World War II's most highly decorated spy. Her name was Odette Sansom, and her code name is Lise, not Lise, as some fancy people like to say. I did look it up, French pronunciation. Yeah, it's as far as the book goes. So overall, what did you think of the way your book was written? Did you enjoy it? Was it a good book?
I'm gonna be completely honest, Sarah. I hate to read.
It's gonna make this easier.
It's not one of the things I enjoy doing. It's pretty good, but there's some too much. I just want facts. Give me. I
Go
still
to the
want to know.
Wikipedia page.
No, that's full of
Lies.
So I don't know. It's interesting. Parts I like, parts I don't like.
Okay, fair enough.
But I also don't really enjoy reading like you do. So
Fair enough.
book club's not good.
It's gonna work out well. This book was. Don't worry about asking me any questions. I'll ask my own questions to myself. How was your book? Well, thank you for asking, babe.
So welcome.
This book was written phenomenally. I really got to say, it's worth reading in and of itself. The guy wrote it. I mean, I don't know how he was able to compile all the different quotes and stuff like that, different conversations, because he kept everything 100% factual, and yet it read kind of like a thriller novel. So I thought that was super cool. And yeah, so I really did enjoy reading this book. So let's start off in the early life so we can learn a little bit about these people before we get into the nitty-gritty. What made them slayers? Or not. I don't know. Maybe they weren't slayers.
Go.
Okay, you want me first?
Yeah,
All right,
you
okay.
first. Sorry.
Little Odette.
Okay.
All right, she grew up in France. Her father was in World War I, and he was killed in World War I fighting against the Germans. He was stationed outside the Valley of the Somme, which, as you know, I love that part of World War I because it's absolutely atrocious battle. It's just horrific. The amount of people that died in several days is it's nauseating. But anyway, her father died there. She did have a kind of a rough childhood. She ended up getting sick a few times as a kid, and so one of the things about her father dying, though, by the way, before I get into what actually happened to her, was it was kind of interesting. Her grandfather used to take her to her father's grave, Gatson. They set him down every time, and he used to tell them, her and her brother, that in 25 years or so, a new war would come, and it'd be your turn to serve the country as good as your father did. So that was kind of a powerful thing. So anyway, earlier in life, she contracted polio at age of 7. Vaccinations are great. Yay, vaccinations. No more polio. And that actually stole her vision. So she was blind, which is pretty horrific. And one of the things that she said was that she became strong in broken places, which I thought was really cool, and a unique way to go over it. So she was blind for 2 years. She went to some witch doctor. Wasn't a witch doctor. She went to some like homeopathic medicine and actually was able to get her vision back. Then she later on got rheumatic fever, and that left her partially paralyzed, and leave her quite weak. So basically, she had kind of a rough childhood, not like the vision of health that you would typically think of when you're thinking of like, oh, I want my daughter to be a warrior someday or kind of a spy. It's not really something you think about. So she kind of had like a weak childhood or a weak constitution. But yet again, she survived all of it. So maybe that's kind of like a, I don't know, so it says something about her ability to survive. So how about yours?
Well, okay, well, we're going to get in it.
The battle starts? All right.
The battle's begun. Mine didn't have a jacked up childhood. Virginia was born April 6, 1906.
You got dates?
I got some dates, not lots of dates, let's not get crazy. In Baltimore, Maryland, her dad was a wealthy banker, and her mom grew up middle class, was a secretary, and then ended up marrying her dad. They lived in a mansion, so not so rough. She attended a private high school. She's known to kind of defy normal convention, like ladies should act for that time. She was a hunter. She skinned rabbits. She rode horses.
Yes.
She once went to school with a bracelet of live snakes.
Okay. Bracelet. So mine's blind. Yours has a bracelet of blind snakes. of snakes. Live snakes. Blind snakes. That'd be scary.
That'd be good. She was voted most original in her high school.
Okay.
Because who shows up to school with snakes? But she always liked to play like more of like the male type of roles. She always wanted to be like the dominant one in the plays, stuff like that. So she already had like that kind of like masculine, some kind of masculine quality there, but she was still a lady.
Okay.
After high school, she attended Radcliffe, which is now Harvard.
No big deal.
No big deal. She went to Barnard.
Okay.
In New York, which is attached to Columbia. She finished her studies in...
Which is the happiest school on earth. Not Columbia, Barnard.
And she went to France to finish her studies there, where she went to, I'm going to butcher this name, École Libre des Sciences et Politiques, to study languages, economics, and press. She became fluent in French, German, Spanish, Italian, and Russian.
All right. Got a couple.
Her major dream as a child in getting through all these fun things was to be an ambassador. At the time, there was, I believe, only 6 women ambassadors for the U.S. in
Dropping
total.
Research on like gangster.
He wasn't expecting that.
Okay.
But one more thing.
Yes.
Her mom wanted her to like be like the traditional wife.
Yeah.
For that time, so she wanted her to marry rich, and like find a rich husband and grow up, or come up in that life.
Nothing wrong with that.
Stuff like that. But she pushed back a lot.
Okay.
She was set up once, but the guy kept cheating on her, so she said, "Get out of here," and then she went to pursue her dreams.
You see, I want you to notice how she cheated there. Okay, I said early childhood. She just went ahead and word vomited all the way up through marriage and college and all these fun. No, now it's about to go down.
Drop some knowledge. Let's go.
It's not about to go down. So,
sorry, I just
okay. So, all right. Well, mine did have a traditional. I did have a really traditional life as far as that goes, outside of her issues. So she got married when she was younger. She had 3 daughters. Then the war broke out in 1939, and her husband went off to fight. So she was left to raise her 3 children, and it got to a certain point. So the big question was, why would this lady, kind of decide to do this? And so her brother had been wounded, and he was in a military hospital in Paris. And Nazis had taken her mother's house because they had overtaken France at the time, and she was no longer living in France. She was living in England at the time.
You said it's like 1939?
Yeah, 1939. Okay. And then, well, that was...
See, now you're years ahead of me, so it's totally cool.
There we go. All right. Okay. But she did speak multiple languages. So she spoke French really, really well. And that was kind of the key to what got her into the system. So, so her brother had been wounded. Her husband was out fighting, and she was left to raise 3 children. So at that point, they sent out an ad saying, hey, we're looking for people. The SOE, which is the Special Operations Executive. They sent out things saying, hey, we're going to need people that can speak French and blah, blah, for interpretation. And then she wrote back saying she wanted to help the war effort. And she's like, I could translate and stuff like that. I'm good. I could help out. And they kind of called her back, and they told her, like, hey, we actually want you to come in and talk to us. And she was like, all right, fine. And they kept trying to recruit her to become a spy. And she was like, no, I don't want to do this. She kept saying,
well, she kind of has 3 kids.
Yeah,
so
she's
I don't blame her. I'd be like, I have 3 daughters. I'm going to be like, hey, no.
Yeah, and let's talk about who was trying to recruit her. So the SOE, they wanted to do guerrilla warfare, which was unique for this war.
It's on now.
Okay, all right.
But I'm gonna have to get caught away. I gotta remember it that you mentioned that. Hang on, we're gonna put it in the notes.
Well, I'm gonna keep talking. You keep listening. How's that? Okay.
See, I'm still in 33.
I'm on page 7.
Okay.
All right. Now this is gonna be quick. This isn't gonna be a long one. Okay. So anyway, there was starting to be guerrilla warfare, which is basically industrial military sabotage. Churchill gave the organization 2 directives, and this is really important, which is why when you think of her, she kept saying she was an ordinary woman, a mother, she was a home cooker, she never really wanted to be in the fight. Churchill gave the organization 2 directives. 1, to create and foster a spirit of resistance in Nazi-occupied countries, and 2, to establish an underground body of operatives who would perform acts of sabotage and assist in liberation when British forces landed. They were headquartered at Baker Street, but the gist of what they were trying to do was they were called the Masters of Mayhem. And that is kind of a really cool, I like that, the Masters of Mayhem. Yeah. So they worked really hard trying to recruit her. She said no several times. And she didn't like the Nazis. She separated the Germans from the Nazis, but she didn't like them because of what they'd done to her family. And during one of the interviews, she was kind of explaining to them, look, I'm not the right person. Well, they take detailed notes of when she leaves the interviews, right? What they're kind of thinking, right? And you have a person that doesn't really want to do this, but they're kind of pursuing her. One of the things that she said, Captain Jepson, you must know that I'm a very simple, ordinary woman. Believe me, I am not very intelligent or well informed. I do not know about politics or government or movements. I am a housewife, and as a good mother as I can make myself. Sometimes that's not very good, I'm afraid. Frankly, I don't think I'm the right sort of person to undertake this work. Jepson wrote, despite all that, like the way that she presented herself, one of the things that he wrote in his notes was so awesome. He returned to his desk and made a final notation at the bottom of Odette's dossier. Direct-minded and courageous. God help the Nazis if we can get her near them. Which is so strange, right?
That's because they know how stay-at-home moms are?
Yeah, so get it down. So anyway, she does decide to join up. And obviously, because that's already in the book, otherwise that would be the end of it. And she decided to go home and stay with her kids. But that to me is kind of the hardest, it's one of the hard moral struggles to jump over here, right? She kind of justified it by like, if I was living in France where I grew up, I wouldn't have the opportunity to avoid the war, right? My kids would be taken, all this stuff like that. Who am I to sit back here and do nothing? Was kind of her mentality behind it. But I couldn't imagine just deciding to leave your kids for a war.
No,
I couldn't think that. I don't get that. Props. So, yeah, it's props, but it's also kind of like I don't know, because there's not even a husband at home, right? But one thing if you like a husband's at home, she left her kids in an orphanage.
Oh well, that's no.
It wasn't quite.
I think that's frowned upon.
Yeah, it wasn't quite an orphanage. It was like a.
It was like a nun.
Yeah, nunnery or something like that. But either way, it's like like here you go, like Mama's gonna go do her thing. So, anyway, that's the beginning of how she got into it.
Okay. Well, we haven't even gotten into it. There's like things.
There's things. All right. Can we? I want to verify as we're still new to this. I want to look at the thing and see make sure it's still recording. So it's suck.
Yep.
It is okay. We're still recording.
All right. All right. So after my chick did all of her things, she wanted to be involved with the State Department. She really wanted to be a diplomat, so she kind of planned to enter through the back door.
Okay.
Because they weren't hiring women at the time. There was only 6, I believe, in total. So she became a clerk in Warsaw on the embassy out there. She took the entrance exam for the diplomat entrance exam. She scored 100%, but she got rejected. So she got frustrated with that. I'm going to kind of speed through this. She got frustrated with that, so in 1933, she applied to, I believe it's Samaria, Turkey, but now it's called Izmir. And she went there because there was more adventure, there was more hunting, so at least she had other stuff to do while she was trying to still become a diplomat.
Okay.
This is where shit got real.
Right. Okay.
December 8th. She went hunting with friends, was climbing over a fence. She fell, gun slipped off her shoulder while she was hunting. She reached down to catch it, accidentally shot herself in the foot.
Ouch.
Not good.
Ooh, negligent discharge. Safety, safety, safety.
So she ended up shooting herself in her left foot. By Christmas, gangrene had taken over her leg, and her body was shutting down. To save her, they took her left leg below the knee at age 27 on Christmas Day. Sounds like someone else we interviewed.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, so badass chick who lost her leg, except she lost her leg to her own mistakes. Now, but look, I mean, I think this sounds cool and all, but mine had to suffer when she was 7 years old. And
okay, but I'm not done, so
Oh,
continue.
okay.
She spent a year, after that, she spent a year learning how to walk again, and she nicknamed her leg Cuthbert.
Cuthbert?
That's the name. Cuthbert or Cuthbert.
Okay. That's
So,
an interesting name.
Yeah, that's what she named it.
Someone
I'm sure
from Harvard.
I don't know. I can't imagine a prosthetic at that time being too well. It was like a wooden.
Yeah.
She used to hide it with thick tights and stuff like that.
Okay.
So after that, she became a clerk again in Venice at the time, I believe. Still trying to become a diplomat. Made another attempt, but was turned down because of her leg. For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And also being a woman at the time, just the jobs weren't there. So she decided to resign from the State Department in 1939. And this is where her journey into World War II begins.
1939, she resigned from the State Department with one leg, intelligent, lots of skills.
Lots of skill, but still, all she wanted to do is help because she saw all the stuff that was going on in Warsaw and saw Nazis coming in and starting to take over things.
So as far as training goes, so she ended up getting trained by them when she decided she would accept the position at the SOE. The training was fairly intense. I think that they glorified training in this. They usually tend to glorify a lot of training in most military books that I've seen. I've done military training. It's not that glorious. I mean, I haven't done these kind of, spec ops guys or whatever, but I mean, some of the training maybe, I don't know, I think it was just a little glorified. They taught her to use weapons. They claimed to train her to use every kind of weapon. I find that extremely hard to believe. And they taught her to kill people. They claimed they taught her to kill people with her bare hands. I, again, find that kind of hard to believe. Because at the time, it's not like today we have all these CrossFit women out there. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure she was extremely strong and stuff.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, it's like, so maybe they taught her to use knives and stuff like that, and how to general fighting skills. But I'd imagine guns would have been her friend. But the goal of her was not. That's kind of missing it from the story. I think is her goal is a courier, right? And a courier is kind of helps people land in France, get out, travel notes back and forth, read supplies. Try to help sabotage things. There's not a lot of great stories of gallantry and stuff like that goes down with the story itself. I mean, she got hurt a couple times, she doesn't complain ever, but her gallantry comes kind of later on in the story. So let's go into a little bit of the war. Are you ready for that? Or you want to do a little training?
Well, I don't have much training in here, but I just kind of how she got into the war.
Okay.
And all the different people.
So how did she get into the war? She was put into the war.
So she went into France because that's where she went to school. She had a big love for the country. Also, she had a love for it because she had a nanny and all that stuff that, I don't know, family trips to France, real,
bougie
stuff. So in 1939, she volunteered to drive ambulance for the French army.
Okay.
So she was picking up wounded, learning the countryside, and so on and so forth. So that's
Dope
kind of
job.
like where she got her start, picking up wounded, bringing them back, and whatnot. After that, while she was doing that, she met a British intelligence officer who gave her a contact for the British SOE. So she ended up traveling to London, and there she met Vera Atkins, which is the British spy master. She's the one who inspired Miss Moneypenny in the James Bond series.
Okay, all right.
So she was impressed so much by her knowledge on linguistics.
Okay,
Because of all her, and she was considered an expert in French countryside because of knowing everywhere to go.
So kind of helped her out a lot.
So that's how she got recruited into the SOE. So from there, they sent her into Vichy, France, and they had her pose.
Is it Vichy or Vicky, France?
I don't know if it's Vichy or Vicky.
I think it's Vicky.
I feel like Vichy sounds.
Vichy.
I feel like it sounds.
That's why everyone was like, "Laze."
I don't know. I'm telling you, I'm gonna butcher things.
It's Lace and Vicky. All right, so she actually saved spot in France.
I wasn't done.
Oh,
yet.
my sincerest
you didn't
apologies.
let me finish.
Okay, continue. Sorry.
So she got sent there.
Yes.
And she posed as a New York Post reporter.
Okay.
That was like her thing.
I love the way you wrote posts.
You're welcome.
Okay.
And then I can go into
The actual thing.
actual
All right. So she ended up getting sent in as well, and I have my notes like you do. One of the last things of training that I think was kind of talked about in both of ours is the knowledge of preventable death. So the idea is the females especially, they had a 42% death rate as far as these spies.
Hey.
Not good odds. Okay?
That's what I was told in my book.
Yeah, so they
it's
match
not
up. So
good.
the stats still match up. And they did give them a lethal pill for them to swallow and kill themselves if they wanted to.
She had that too.
Exactly.
See?
The Gestapo were hunting them, but not just the Gestapo. The Gestapo worked with a different secret police service that hunted them, who is a fascinating character in this. Hugo Bleacher or whatever. He's a fascinating character. You want to hate him, but he's so gentlemanly at the same time. And he does like all the right things. Like, he's just like the ultimate like bad guy. Like but he's not really. I don't know. It's hard to tell. He's a man doing his job, right? He knows he's going to turn people over to the Gestapo. He knows what the Gestapo's going to do to them.
Yeah.
But he's a spy hunter, and he's one of the most famous spy hunters. So he was sent after them. Anyway, she goes in with a man named Peter, who Peter Churchill, of no relation, but that does help them out later on. Spoiler alert. And they ended up going into France and just starting to work the general operation. Again, there's not a whole lot of real excitement and thrills as far as that goes within this. Apparently, espionage was a whole lot of terrifying meetings, just trying to get supplies around, you know? So you walk into a place, if you get caught, you know it's high risk, but there's not like you're gonna get some major shit out and like karate chop people and all this other fun stuff. But anyway, so she does that, and what kind of sells this book, I think, to a broader audience is a love story in it too. So you're gonna have to balance that with your own judgment as well. It's kind of hard.
Did her husband die?
Her husband did not die. Her father died near
So she had
the
an
Somme.
affair.
And Hugo, the Nazi conveniently, he was actually served in World War I as well as World War II, and he was 100. Anyway, so we'll get into a little bit about Hugo. So anyway, yes, she's having an affair. Yeah, it gets spicy with the man Peter. However, they really talk about it seems to be more of an emotional affair. You could both tell that they want each other and they long for each other. But I don't know if it was the time and kind of like what's proper, or maybe they just didn't want to dirty each other's reputations by divulging like maybe like the more risque stuff that they did together. But it's pretty damn clear that they are full on in it to win it with each other, and yeah, so that's kind of so I mean, it's the hardest part about this is like you're rooting for this lady, she's so badass, and it's like, and you shouldn't judge people, I know that, but it's kind of hard now. You're like, oh, you leave your children behind to go off in a war and cheat on your husband.
But she's a bad bitch, so.
I know, right? But it's like, how do you not, like...
I don't know, but if you're a spy and you're living, like, alternate life. And also, at that time, like, it's not like you knew, like, if your husband was really coming back.
Yeah, you probably had no clue. But still, was that what you did to me on deployment? You would just, like, go
I
out
was
to the
like,
bars?
you know what? I was like,
We couldn't talk for 4 months. What were you doing?
Watching Planet Earth, cuddling with my dog.
That sounds right. That sounds accurate. All right. Okay. So, then let's get a little bit of Hugo. Hugo, you fought in World War One. He was stationed near the Western Front, near the Somme Valley. He was captured by the British and interned as a prisoner of war near Camp Abbeville. Displaying uncanny skills, he escaped on 4 occasions, but was recaptured each time. One of the things that he did say, though, when he was a prisoner of war there, was how absolutely professional the British people treated him. They said that it was actually really interesting. Because you usually hear horror stories of prisoners of war. I know Hugo was married. He had children. He had a couple women on the side, a couple of mistresses as well. And I think that he had a thing for Miss Odette or Miss Elise as well. He didn't have any qualifications for the general duty, but he was extremely smart. He was good at linguistics, and within no time, he took down one of the largest spy rings for the SOE and kind of secured his name. So at that point, he started going after spies, and at which point it kind of takes a turn because Hitler had made a few notes basically saying, look, we kill all the spies. You know, they don't fall under the Jew Convention. We're going to kill all the spies. So torture them, get the information out of them, and then kill them. So that kind of puts into, you know, a moral quandary of this man, Hugo, who doesn't seem to be a man without morals, which we'll kind of get into a little bit later. We should probably speed up a little. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, well, and then also, you're further into the war. This is still beginning war for me.
Okay, all right.
So, like, this is all still before D-Day, before all that fun stuff happened.
All right.
So, she was posed as a reporter. So her op was codenamed Heckler. Her job was to collect info on the area, Vichy, Vicky, France, whatever. Her job was to recruit spies, collect information on ammo, industrial, and field movement, coordinate resistance efforts, and she was basically the underground information organizer for that. There she built a group of 90 plus spies and agents. She befriended nuns and prostitutes for information on the Germans.
So funny, the prostitutes, I think in both or books were the whorehouses were used as kind of safe houses for who would have thought prostitutes with a heart of gold.
So there she set up safe houses. She aided in prison breaks, freeing agents from Nazi prisons. She sabotaged railways, factories. She was responsible for disappearance of Nazi pilots that parachuted out of planes. Winston Churchill said that she set Europe ablaze. That was her job.
I love this lady.
So
I wish I had more stories. I don't really have many stories for her.
Okay, my kind of bad guy, if you will.
Okay, all right.
Klaus Barbie.
Klaus.
He's known as the Lion of Vichy or Vicky. I don't know. This is really bad, guys.
You let us know what it is.
So, anyways, he don't like her at all because she was messing up all sorts of plans. Ammo wasn't getting places. They were supplies, things were getting shut off. So they created wanted posters. It says Olympian Lady. One of Barbie's quotes: "I would give anything to get my hands on that limping Canadian bitch."
Was she Canadian?
No, she was American, and they thought she was Canadian.
Oh, I love it.
So,
I love it.
Let me just let me get her out of France.
Yeah, get her out of France. Get her there.
So, anyways, while this is going on in 1942, big jailbreak. This is what really pissed everybody off.
Yeah.
So she aided in a jailbreak there, which a lot of her spies were captured by the Germans. So they're in a German prison. So the way they kind of got out is they were writing letters back and forth, and then people were posing as wives of the people in there. So they were bringing food in. So they were using they were bringing sardines in, and so the key top they were using that to make keys to get out.
Smart.
She even went to the prison disguised and everything. So in July, they ended up escaping, and then she got them, smuggled them back to England and Spain.
Yours sounds like it's got a lot more of a timeline set up.
Yeah,
Really
so like
nice.
that's so it's like boom. Like
This is a novel. I'd probably enjoy that more.
So anyways, that really pissed off the Germans.
Okay.
It's really pissed off. So the Germans, this is when like France was shit out of luck, and the Germans full on took over. So Germans flooded the streets with 500 plus agents to go over the resistance and the SOE at the time. So all her contacts now were not to be trusted, and she was forced to escape France.
Okay.
Okay, so when she was forced to escape on her one leg, she had to flee over the Pyrenees Mountains to get to Spain in the snow. 50 miles in 2 days, over 75,000 feet. Known as Freedom Trail now. When she got over there, they ended up getting down, and her and I believe it was like 2 other guys that escaped with her were arrested for illegal entry for 6 weeks in Spain, and then the U.S. Embassy actually got her out. And one of the quotes I thought was kind of funny is, so before she fled over, she sent stuff over to the SOE, and she said, I hope Cuthbert, her leg, wouldn't give her any trouble on the way. The SOE responded, not understanding, if Cuthbert is giving you trouble, eliminate him. So after they got her back, the SOE wouldn't send her back there because she was considered compromised. So then that's when the USA took her, and then she became another spy for them.
For them. Okay, all right.
So,
Wow. Okay, let's get in a little bit here. All right, so same thing. Germany had taken over France because of the same war, and they were kind of they were operating within that territory, which made it really kind of nerve-wracking. There wasn't a whole lot of places that would let them operate in, and Nazis are pretty much everywhere. Most of the work kind of got done in hotel lobbies and stuff like that.
There was lots of meeting in hotels back then.
Yeah.
And like Germans taking over hotels as their bases.
No, so here's an understanding of how like much gall she has. I think that kind of really helped her was her kind of indomitable spirit, right? So she's a spy in an occupied German country. She's on a train, and they have the ticket comes for the food they eat, and they get to pay the meal.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a separate tax there for the orphans. There's a France tax. It's for winter relief fund, children's winter relief funds, and it's a required tax that you have to pay for the orphans of the war. And Odette gets up, walks to a German officer, a Nazi there, and goes, I think that you, who are instrumental in bringing about the need for this fund, should pay for this ticket.
I like her.
So
Spicy.
yeah, and he does. She's just
Well, your chick's hot too, so that
does help.
That helps her a little
That
bit.
does help. Anyway, things start kind of coming down on them a little bit. There is a kind of a cool scene where they're trying to get where they were set up by the Germans, and they ended up trying to escape through, and they all had to kind of scatter as the Germans because it was a trap, and she jumped into a freezing river at the time, to climb out of it in her skirt and all this other stuff, and almost froze to death. She also another op trying to get Peter back in, she fell off a mountain, shattered her one of her vertebrae.
Oh, that sucks.
Didn't complain, didn't tell anybody, broke 3 of her ribs, and just kept on going.
Well,
Just kind of
grin and bear it.
yeah. So anyway, there was one of the guys within their group fell asleep on a train, and his briefcase was stolen from him and had a lot of list names in there. And I think that's where Hugo kind of got onto their trail.
Gotcha.
He then captured that guy, and he used a very cunning way to convince him that Hugo was going to escape was going to help him escape, and they were both going to go back to London together.
Okay.
And they used Odette and Peter and Arnaud, who's a badass Jewish dude who helps them out as well, to kind of help this escape take place. And it was obviously a trap. So she ended up getting captured by Hugo. And
Well, it's never good to get captured.
no, it's not. And Hugo and her, it was interesting. I mean, he was so polite. He kind of said, some of the things. He said, "You have done a very good job of your work, and you almost won the game." Oh, he says to Peter, "It is not your fault that you lost." They called him Henry a lot. Maybe his name better than Henry, explaining in vague reference to her people that her people were bad. So he was kind of very polite about the whole thing. And she was not taking it. So let's get into a little bit of her capture, if you're okay.
I'm good with that.
All right, so
Mine is just proven, so I'm going to sum up what she did with the U.S. and then I'm going to let her humble brag at the end.
okay, fair enough. All right, well look, so
There you go.
good to go. All right, so she ended up getting captured, and the way that they do this is they interrogate them along the way. There's several prisons that they kind of take them through and interrogate them on, and it seems to kind of be like the circles of hell. They just keep getting worse and worse as she kind of goes down. And she was tortured, and they do talk about that quite a bit. But one of the things that she said was Henry was really kind of felt bad for her being tortured, and he just wanted her to give something up, right? And at one point they stuck a burning hot metal rod into her center of her back, burning her back. Then they started pulling her toenails off slowly, one by one, asking her
You're just really jacked up.
where each person is.
Mm-hmm.
And people typically pass out in the process. She didn't give up a single name, didn't say anything, just kept quiet and remained polite the whole time too, which is kind of interesting as well. She kind of said no thank you a lot. So one of her reasons is he says, your friends are going to give up stuff, so why don't you? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the ruse that she had kind of played on, the reason they didn't kill her right away is because Peter's last name was Churchill. So she told them that they were married and that they were related to Winston Churchill.
Oh, well,
so they were
smart.
high value. Yes, she came up with that little story. So she said, yes, I do. But she's talking about, you realize that your friends are going to give up some people as well. So why don't you just go ahead and give up? Do as much for you as you can and then, as you can do. She says, yes, I do. But the point is unimportant. I do not barter loyalty against loyalty. I am no shopkeeper, monsieur, and I sell nothing by the pound. If these amateur spies and saboteurs, as you call them, were indeed prepared to betray me, which I don't believe, that would not influence my decision in any way. I am only responsible to my own conscience.
Okay.
Right? She knows that, other people might be giving up names, and she's still not going to succumb to those names. So I'm going to kind of go off the rest of this just a little bit by memory here. There's so many good things in it. I recommend that you read the book because it is a compelling book. One of the things she said that she was charged for treason twice, another great quote. She was charged for multiple counts of espionage and treason.
Mm-hmm.
And she's standing there in front of the Germans and stop them. And she flashed a patronizing smile. Gentlemen, you must take your pick of counts. I can only die once. She knows she's going to die. Doesn't care. Is with it. So anyway, she was tortured relentlessly. Hugo kept making visits, allowing her and Peter to kind of talk to each other. Henry, if you want to call him, he actually wanted to take her out to see Mozart and stuff like that. And he did eventually take Peter out in the town one night, despite being in kind of a shit Nazi prison. She refused to go every single time, accept no favors. She was her biggest thing. If I start with this, where will it lead?
Yeah.
I accept no
Makes
favors.
sense.
So she accepted 0 favors. Then she was later on transferred to a concentration camp, a female concentration camp, which was absolutely fucking horrific. And because of her status there, she was sent to a cell which was pitch black, no light whatsoever. It was supposed to be sensitive, depriving. But because she'd been blind early in her childhood, she was kind of used to it. But the cell's location was her own personal hell. she did pray at that time, and she kind of she tried to fight the battles that she couldn't fight. So next to it, her cell was the whipping room. So they would take the women in there at 6 p.m. every night and beat them, or kill them, or assassinate them, or whatever. And she would have to listen to that every day, and that was her kind of personal hell. And she was hoping that her strength would give them strength. She ended up getting very, very ill, very sick at the time, as you can imagine. They were starving her, and it's a concentration camp, so nobody comes out of this thing's looking great. Then at one point, they were upset with her because the Allies were kind of wreaking havoc on the Germans pretty hard, and so they turned the heat on in her cell, and she was sweating, dehydrated. They forgot to feed her for weeks or whatever, a week.
That's lovely. So nice of them.
Yeah, this is just this horrific situation. One of her lymph nodes was swollen up like a grapefruit, and as the war winded down, she started hearing them push. She were killing obviously lots of people, but she would hear them and incinerating them in burners, and she could hear them pushing women that were still alive into the furnaces and trying to exterminate them as fast as they possibly could. It was really only her name. There were 6 other spies that were caught along with her, female spies. They all ended up dying. Towards the end, she was when they had to escape the concentration camp because the Allies were closing in on the concentration camp, and they were trying to get rid of all the evidence. They pulled her aside. They lined her up with a bunch of women. They shot one of the women, and the rest of the women attacked. She kind of claimed, states it kind of like they attacked the dead woman like ravaging dogs, just starving for food, and were kind of eating her. It's crazy, what people turn into when they're deprived of so much in such horrific conditions. She was then driven by the head of that prison out to be dropped off and use her as exchange bait. And she had some badass stuff to say at the time there. I won't give it away. And she ended up getting freed and saved by the Americans. The Americans saved them, USA. And then she was kind of given the prognosis, all the medical treatment afterwards. They told her that she was going to die because there was no way to save her, because one of her toes had turned gangrene because they'd torn them all off, the toenails off, no medical help. And so, but one of the things that impressed me most about her is her character. Her willingness to just kind of undergo insurmountable torture, never ever give up a name, take 0 favors whatsoever, and for the most part be okay with her own misery. And that's, the idea of being worthy of your suffering, like we kind of talk about frequently, is she was damn sure worthy of her suffering. So that alone that's what I found the most compelling part about who she was. And when they said that she was a highly decorated spy, that's debatable. She received the highest honor in British medals the George Cross, whatever, I don't know what it is. And she didn't have the most medals, right? It sounds like your person was probably a little more of a hard-ass slayer. And so anyway, so the tying up the story, and then I'll let you tie up your story, is she ended up marrying Peter after the war. She got home, divorced her husband, who didn't live through the war. Then she ended up marrying Peter, and you're like, yay, happy ending. They were divorced 9 years later, so not the best taste in men. Her personal life is such garbage. She's so amazing, though.
Did she get her kids back?
She got her kids back. Okay. Yeah. And her grandchildren still give speeches today, and there's a great memorial that's done by her. And look, the country treated her very well after the fact. There was a lot of nonsense that came out saying that she lied about a bunch of stuff, but all that has since been proven wrong. That everything was accurate, 100% of it, and she hadn't lied about anything. So, incredibly powerful woman. So, what do you got?
All right, so after her British SOE, after all that mountain, all that jazz, the U.S. picked her up. She ended up being in the OSS, which is now the CIA.
Yeah.
They sent her back
to
spearhead the underground resistance.
All right.
So before she went over there, she disguised herself as a peasant woman. A makeup artist. She hired a makeup artist to teach her how to make herself look old, do the wrinkles, whole 9 yards. She had a dentist grind down her teeth so she could look more like a milkmaid. And then she would be like up to 4 different people in a day.
Okay.
Okay, so that's kind of what she went over there. D-Day. She just helped. This is all her operation, I believe. Destroyed 4 bridges. She severed phone lines. She derailed trains again. She cut off reinforcement and ways to retreat for the Germans. She was responsible for those things. She helped agents drop into France.
Into Friends.
Into France.
Into the
after
TV show from the
Normandy.
90s.
She aided in all the guerrilla warfare training, like you talked about. She called in airdrops, again, derailing airdrops on like freight trains, bridges.
She was setting charges, blowing stuff up, killing people.
Responsible for killing up to 150 Nazis.
Oh, gangster!
And captured 500 plus.
Oh, gangster!
Took back villages before Allied troops even arrived. Now humble brag.
Humble brag.
For her, because why not? So, her awards. She is the only civilian woman to receive the Distinguished Service Cross. Truman wanted to honor her publicly. She didn't want to because there was still work to be done, her quote. And she also didn't want to get any of her friends killed. Her mom was the only one.
Because the war hadn't ended at this point.
No, the war hadn't ended at this point. Her mom was the only one who came and watched.
Okay.
Britain made her an honorary member of the Order of the British Empire. France gave her the La Croix de Guerre.
The coup de grace.
Orb. She never spoke publicly about anything. In 2016, CIA Field Agent Facility was named Virginia Hall Expeditionary Center. And also the CIA Museum gives 5 operatives individual sections. One is of her, the other 4 are of men that went on to lead the CIA. And then in 2019, she was inducted into Maryland's Women's Hall of Fame.
Badass.
Bam!
Bam and bam. So those are our 2. Codename Lise Odette Sanson.
Here, just hold it up.
Yeah.
Looks like
Later
this.
Odette Churchill. Yeah.
And then Virginia Hall. Woman of no importance.
Of no importance. You gotta work on your
No
enunciation.
importance.
Anyway, well, all right. So her greatest strength versus your greatest strength. I think her greatest strength is sounds like yours was able to get a lot more done. Definitely seemed to have a lot more skill set. She was captured fairly early and spent several years. So I'd say half of this book is of her being in prison. Her greatest strength is her quiet resolve, her inability to, seemingly inability to give anybody up or take any favors, to withstand torture. I mean, just earnestly, I don't know, just, it's rough. It's rough. You get sick to your stomach reading kind of half of what they did to her, but that's kind of the reality of what they did in Nazi Germany. That's why it was such a shit situation. Yes, this book reads more like a novel, a romance novel, halfway through it there.
Mine reads like a novel, too, to an extent.
I'll probably end up reading yours after this. You might want to read mine. You'll enjoy this more.
Maybe.
All right, so what was your greatest strengths, do you think? I mean, of who
I don't know.
was.
Just in general, she had like some gusto. She knew what she wanted from the beginning. She just wanted to help, and I think to just like dive headfirst into things and just get after it takes a lot. Especially probably for a woman at like the time of both these women, just to be like, all right, here we go, when that's not the norm. So,
well, I like that. Look, it just sounds like a badass to the core. I could have humble bragged about her training, but I don't really know if I buy into a lot of the stuff they trained her with.
I know. I also cross-referenced mine with the History Channel and all.
I cross-referenced a lot of the stuff.
So.
Like, the thing is like, I'm sure that a lot of people were trained in such ways to kill people in all these different ways. But look, fighting and real life is not like action movies. So you're gonna kill people. It's gonna be messy. Your plan's gonna go wrong.
Are you telling me that John Wick's not real?
He is in my heart and in my dreams. All right, so those are 2 people. You tell us who you think's badass. I'm voting for her. Virginia Hall.
I never win, guys.
She slays body. She wins all the time. She cheats usually. So you tell me it is Odette Sampson, or codename Lise, versus Virginia Hall. You want to try to enunciate that again?
Virginia Hall.
Woman of no
importance.
Nailed it. All right, that's it. First one in the books. We out.